Well, hello again and welcome. My name is Natalie Grieshammer Patrick. I'm the Director of Artist Resources at Summit Artspace, and Heather Meeker, our Executive Director, will also be co-leading this program tonight. We're excited to welcome you to the webinar, Assessing Your Technology Toolkit. And this new professional development series is intended to support local artists in authentically integrating technology into your artistic practice. So next up in the series, we have Check It Out, tech-driven production resources for artists with an in-person tour at the Tech Zone on August 12th and a Zoom version on August 17th. I will share the link in the chat shortly where you'll be able to find more information. And I'm assuming all of you guys are familiar with Summit Artspace, but if you're not, our mission is to connect local artists to the resources they need to thrive. Artist care programs like this are one of the many ways that we carry out that mission. And we are pleased tonight to be able to offer this course at no cost, thanks to support from the Knight Foundation, who deeply values artists exploring the intersection of arts and technology. As Heather mentioned, we are recording the program tonight so that we can be using it later as a resource. So during the program, please make sure just to remain on mute so that we can make sure everything runs smoothly, but feel free to chime in with comments in the chat. And we do, as Heather mentioned, have a pretty packed schedule for you. So we are going to go ahead and get started. Let me just share my screen here. Okay. Can everyone see the screen? Wonderful. So we wanted to get started by hearing from all of you guys, and since we have a small group, then that's great. So if everyone, I'll just call out names that I see on the screen, and if you want to share your name, your artistic discipline, and if you can share what technology you use the most right now. So Don, do you want to go ahead and get started?
Oh, sure. Put me on the spot. Don Parsison, and I'm a photographer. I have a studio space at Summit Artspace. Probably the technology I use most often is Lightroom and Photoshop. As far as online, I do have an e-commerce site where I have one of my products for sale. And other than that, I've got Instagram going, but I'm really horrible at keeping it up to date.
Thanks for sharing.
Sure.
Next on my screen, we have Mary Beth.
Hi, I'm Mary Beth Stauffer, painter and educator, University of Akron and Ashland University. I have avoided technology, and I am new to Instagram, and I'm trying to learn how to best use Instagram. I dabble in Photoshop as needed.
Great, thanks for sharing. And then next on my screen, you're coming up as owner. Oh, and you need to unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Janice Filipski, and the medium that I work in most of the time is jewelry. The technology that I do use are both Facebook, which has been a challenge since the new program came into effect. I don't feel comfortable with it. I have an Instagram account, but I do not use Instagram. And I also have just a site on festival.net to just advertise where I will have my shows. I do a minimum, small amount of shows a year, 3, and I want to increase my knowledge of technology to consider using it. I used to manage the Hudson Society of Artists Wix page, but I've stepped down from that.
Great, thanks, Janice.
You're welcome.
Last but not least, Tamara.
My name is Tamara Yeager, and I do mostly wildlife and nature artwork, focusing on torn paper and mixed media type collage. Technology wise, I use photo editing software. I used to use Photoshop, but I've switched to Paint Shop Pro because I could actually get that as a standalone and not have to pay a subscription. I do have a website which needs a little updating, and I do social media, and I have an Etsy shop, but that's about it.
Wonderful. Thanks again, everyone, for sharing. And it's great to meet all of you, for those who don't already know.
Natalie, I'm putting you and I into this mix of things too. So I'll start and then I'm going to kick it back to you. So again, Heather Meeker, I'm the executive director of Summit Artspace. And as far as artistic discipline for me, my background is actually in theater, and but I have always been on the arts administration side of things. So that's where I come from, and I like to cop to the title of creative producer, because what I love to do is to help artists of all genres figure out how to do what they do. And the technology that I'm using the most right now, I would say it's probably my email. It's Microsoft 365 in all ways, but predominantly calendar and communication management. Something maybe a little bit more fun. I'm on Facebook most frequently, although I do try to get onto the other social media platforms as well. And now, how about you, Natalie?
So again, Natalie Grieshammer Patrick, Director of Artist Resources here. My background is in visual arts, and I'm a fiber artist, mostly weaving. And what technology do I use the most? Definitely same as Heather. I am in my email all the time. And as far as social media, probably Instagram, probably on there too much. But what can you do? Great. So now we can move forward. So why is leveraging your technology toolkit important? So I'm probably going to tell you some things that you already know here, but it's a lot of work to be an artist, right? You want to focus as much time as you can on creating the actual artwork. So by integrating these technology platforms and doing them in the right way, you hopefully will be able to do things like cultivate an audience, while still being able to focus the time that you really want on the artwork itself. Keeping this in mind, each artist will have their own kind of needs, strengths, and preferences for how technology can support you. So what I mean by that is there's all these different ways, right? And you might be like, I really love engaging with people online. I actually am great at social media. That's something I know I can do myself, but maybe managing finances is not really for me. Like, can you pay someone to help with that part of it? Can you completely outsource it? So what we're going to do today is kind of give you some tools to be able to look at, where you're going to need help, how you're going to be able to integrate some of these things into the business elements of being an artist. And just a reminder that adding these things into your practice, into your business, is not going to be easy all the time, and those growing pains are inevitable, but the goal is that through that you'll be able to be even more efficient in the long run. So please be kind to yourself and remember that time is a resource. Heather, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I don't think so. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the goals for the course and sort of what this is not. I think that, as Natalie and I were thinking about this, we wanted this to be something that you all walked away from with, some ideas and plans about. I'm thrilled when you all shared some of the technology that you're using. A lot of the technology that you identified is either stuff that you can, move into or that you want to recommit to, but you also mentioned some technologies that are actually about helping you with the work that you are creating. We had a great discussion a couple of weeks ago, which is available on our YouTube page, about how to incorporate and use technology as part of making artwork. This is really going to be about how do we incorporate technology-based tools to support our practice. So Natalie, take it away, and we'll just sort of launch in with what we're going to try and do tonight.
Yeah. So as I kind of mentioned before, this is a very broad overview of kind of what is out there. Heather and I are both kind of end users, we're arts administrators, so we've used a lot of these platforms, but at the same time, we are not experts. So the idea is like, we're giving you ideas here of what you can use, but some of you might be experts in certain things. So if we're talking about a specific platform and you know something about it, feel free to share it in the chat, and then we'll all be a little bit smarter because of that. And also research, which we'll talk about later. And so we'll have a self-reflection activity, which Heather's actually we're going to start off right off the bat with you guys thinking about, how technology is important to what you're already doing. And then we'll go through some of those resources. So Heather, you want to start with the activity?
Sure. So what I would like to encourage you all to do is to start with, sorry, I'm moving in between places here. Start putting a little bit of your thoughts together. And I would encourage you pen to paper, because part of this is about being able to acknowledge things and write things down. The question that we have is, because we all have these things, no matter who we are and no matter what technology we're using and how facile we are with it, what feels daunting for you when it comes to technology or technology-based support? In other words, it is this question of, why are you here specifically? But I really do want you to think about what are you carrying that might be heavy, that feels like something you want to resolve as a result of what we talk about here tonight. So if you'll just take a couple of minutes to formulate that, we'll take a little pause, and then we'll come back for the next question in this reflection. I've got my timer here, so I'm paying attention. Give it another 45 seconds or so. And please feel free to put your emotions down here too. How are you feeling when you reflect on this? When you're ready, the next question is, what are your first thoughts toward a plan to address that challenge or need? What is your desired outcome? One of the things that Brene Brown always talks about when she's thinking through, objectives is this idea of, she borrows an artistic term. She says, how do you paint done? What does done look like for you? Or what does accomplishing something look like for you? Paint that for me. So think a little bit about if this is something that you imagine in the future that you successfully are addressing, what are the elements of that? So write a little bit about that. And you can also work in there as part of the details. How soon do you need to address this? And are there people who you already know who you could bring into this sphere with you? So we'll give that about a minute or so. Maybe just another 15 seconds or so on that. I know we're moving quickly. You can always come back to these things following the program. And the next and last question for self-reflection is, looking at what you have just outlined, is this something that you will ultimately do yourself or outsource, at least initially? Or maybe it's a mixture of both. What do you need to know or do to make that decision about whether it's something that you are going to do or something that you need to turn to someone else for? What do you need to know to move forward? Okay. When you're ready, what we would love to do is to, because it always, we believe always helps to think about these things together a little bit and to hear what everybody else is going through, because chances are, I know as we move through these questions, Natalie and I, for sure, are thinking about the things in our lives that, fall under these categories as well. Is there anybody who might like to share any, element or a summary of what this process was like for you, and if there are any details that you would like to share, because this really is setting out an intention for how we move through the rest of our 37 minutes together.
I'll share. Is this all being recorded?
Yes, it is being recorded, so please do keep that in mind. We can't promise a vault here, so please share only those things that you feel comfortable sharing with the broad public.
So something that I really feel I must learn is Illustrator, because of the way that I'd like to manipulate artwork and then also make prints. And I keep putting it off because of time and also money. I just try to think where money should go or not go, and I'm always thinking about that. But I would like to take like a fast Illustrator course that just covers the essentials. I just want to do it fast and quick. And I think the reason that I put it off is think, oh boy, I have to do a semester-long course, or I'm going to have to find something expensive online, or spend all this time digging through videos online and trying to figure out which ones I should spend researching. So that to me is daunting. It's overwhelming to think about. Okay, how do I approach doing something fast, quick, and essential in Illustrator without doing too much research? So I think that's a big one for me.
Thank you very much for sharing that. And I very much appreciate, again, painting, you painted some of the barriers and the challenges that we all tell ourselves. It's Illustrator is your specific thing, but the details that you bring up are the same details that all of us take under consideration anytime we're learning something new. And it can be especially daunting when it's technology, since technology is always changing so quickly too. So thank you for that. Would anybody else like to share what some of your reflection was about?
I would like to share.
Thanks, Janice.
Know that there's a lot of venues out there for social media, and between Etsy, Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram, what's the most popular at this point? So if you decided to learn one area, I would want to get the biggest bang for my buck and my time. And I share Mary Beth's concern about regarding it, the process. You would like to make it clean and easy and effective. So that's the most, which one drives, which is the most popular right now?
Great, thank you. I'm not putting you guys on the spot, Don and Tamara. It's really more a question of like, is there anything that you might want to share? It's okay for anybody to pass on any of this.
Or I can, I'm sure. I kind of need to work on like online marketing type stuff related to things like my Etsy shop and that sort of thing. And I'm always told things like, oh, Pinterest is a great tool for driving traffic to these things. And I absolutely despise Pinterest. I hate it. I don't want to do anything with it. I don't want to sit there and pin things. I'd rather gouge my eyes out with a spoon. So that's something that realistically isn't going to happen for me unless I can pay someone else to do it. And that's like kind of my catch-22 there. Is like I don't have the resources right now to pay someone to do it, but if I did pay someone to do it, that might bring in more money. And so I'm not quite sure how to balance that.
Thank you. Don?
Well, I can't be the odd man out here. I think my biggest need is to get a website that's up to date. The one that I've got right now, I created years ago with a platform that I'm not sure even still exists. So I don't know how to go in and edit it. And I hesitate to give people the link to it because I have absolutely zero photographs on it. It's all my sculpture, which was from a previous life. So I'd say that's what I need to do most. And I realized that at least to get started, I need somebody to hold my hand and say, okay, do this, no, don't do that, do this, do this. And then once I feel comfortable at how to do it, I could take it over. But it's like somebody needs to show me the doorway in, and then I'm going to be good.
Thank you. Okay, I just want to honor what all of you have brought to the table here, because these are things, you are not alone in this. These are the feelings and situations that everybody encounters as we move through pulling new technology into our frameworks, whether it's something that we're going to be used for making art or something that we're going to be used for managing our practice, or recommitting or updating things, which can sometimes seem like just as much work. Don, I'm thinking about, like a website. Updating a website can often feel like just as much work as starting from scratch. So, these are all things that we will refer back to as we move forward. Right, Natalie?
Absolutely. So now that, you guys have some of this in mind, that can kind of help keep in the back of your head while we're going through some of these resources. Again, this is super high level, big picture. We wanted to start off with things like artist opportunities and archiving. A lot of this is kind of web-based stuff. So there's a ton of job boards out there where you can find information about arts jobs and calls for art and things like this. I would highly recommend Creative Compass, which is based in Cleveland. They have plenty of Northeast Ohio opportunities on there. Cafe as well, which does require a subscription fee. I don't know offhand exactly how much that is, but that's the kind of thing that you could share with another artist or something. And that is nationwide calls for art. And then a lot of art schools actually have their own job boards. So for example, like I went to CIA and they have a job board specifically for their alumni. So you can always check and see if maybe the school you went to might have something like that. Additionally, keep in mind there are submission platforms for those calls for art. So here at Summit Artspace, we use Submittable, and I've worked at other arts organizations that also use Submittable. You can have an account to something like this, and then it saves all of your information about your the calls that you submitted. And so that's a great kind of resource to have and know how to use. There are artwork database platforms. So this is for artists or galleries who maybe have large quantities of artwork and they're trying to make sure that they're keeping track of it. I researched a couple for you guys because I don't really have experience in the platforms that are out there, but I saw there's ArtLogic and Art Galleria, two that came up. And then of course there are things like Excel, Word, and Google Drive where you can make sure that you're archiving your artwork, which is going to help keep you organized for when you do submit to exhibitions and opportunities. It'll make it a lot easier for you to have that all organized. There are collaboration opportunities and production facilities locally that work with different elements of technology. So if there's gaps in your knowledge, we'd highly recommend kind of seeking out these organizations and the people that are working at these organizations, both for the artistic production element of your art, but also for professional resources. And you can probably find both of those things at the same place. So for example, Akron Makerspace and the Tech Zone, which we do have that upcoming program in. So if this is something you're interested in, I'd highly recommend coming to that, because they have everything like with laser engravers. So that might be great for a photo person to translate into art for them. But they also have vinyl printers, so you can make a banner to go to shows or
$2 a yard, by the way.
super cheap resources available there, and their librarians are there and they walk you through every single step, so they make it super easy. All you basically have to do is set up a time to go. And then there's also Bounce Innovation Hub I want to mention. They mostly work with innovation and entrepreneurs, so you never know what kind of entrepreneurs might be working in that space and might have an overlap with something that you're doing on the art side of your art or the kind of professional side. They do also have some art making stuff. Like I know they have looms, they have I know Akron Makerspace has 3D printers, but they have like specific art stuff at Bounce too, actually. So that's something to look into. And then the ThinkBox up at Case Western Reserve University is very similar to Tech Zone and Makerspace. So they have lots of kind of tech-based resources for people. And then Ingenuity Fest is a great organization that is kind of more event-based and production-based. So if you're an artist working in tech and making art that kind of intersects with tech, that would be a great resource to get involved with, because they're actively showing that type of art. Seeing a couple things in my chat.
That's okay. We can keep it going, Natalie. We'll swing back around to
I
them.
just didn't want to make sure I'm missing anything.
I'll make sure we do.
Cool. All right. So then a few of you have mentioned digital marketing and communications, and we know that this is something that's really important to every artist, and it's because it's important. You want to connect with and grow your audience, but in a strategic way. I know some of you mentioned that knowing which social media platforms to use is really important. But before we get there, I do want to talk about graphics creation, and someone mentioned Illustrator. So Adobe is a really great resource if you have the skills to be able to create kind of your own graphics. I would also recommend Canva. It would be less kind of art production focused and would be more focused on like being able to put text over images, and they have preset sizing for different social media platforms. So you could like pick something and they have different templates already, and then you can kind of customize them based on your brand or your event or whatever you have going on, and have that already be at the right size for whatever social media platform you might be using. So I think that, and I should mention that they do have a base level, which is free. They do have a paid one as well, if you're looking for doing more with it. But the great thing about Canva is they save all of your branding stuff. So if you want to make sure you're looking consistent on social media, I would very much recommend that. And then to social media itself, there are obviously so many platforms out there. So Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, just to name a few, each platform does have its own audience. So it's not really necessarily about what is the most popular. It's more like what is most popular with your target audience. So like TikTok is super popular right now, but it's very popular with Gen Z. So if Gen Z is not your audience, then that might not be the platform for you. And there's tons of data out there as to, who is using each of these different platforms. So I recommend looking that up or going to something where they're going to tell you that. And Hootsuite is on there, which is a really great resource because you can actually link all of your social media platforms to it and schedule things out. So if you're someone who you don't want to spend time on social media if you don't have to, then that's a great resource to be able to schedule things out to make sure that you are, getting that content out there. but I also want to make sure you realize that genuine engagement on social media is very important. So even though, you have that as like a tool, you want to make sure that you're still going on social media and interacting with people.
And I want to interject here real quick, Natalie, just to say that I heard very much that idea of like, how do you decide? I appreciate what you say about it. Not necessarily that the decision might not be what is the most popular, but what is the most popular with who you're trying to reach. I would also throw in there at the same time, getting facile with what you choose, but also recognizing that you might have 2 or 3 platforms that meet that criteria, and you should be picking the one you are comfortable with and leaning in on it. Because if you aren't enjoying that process, if you aren't enjoying the engagement and the building on that social media platform, then you are not going to continue to use it. And there are enough possibilities out there. You're not going to do all of them. Hootsuite does let you do more with the same amount of work, but really leaning in on 1 or 2 is going to be an infinitely more valuable thing than trying to work in platforms that you don't enjoy or trying to reach too many platforms and trying to keep up, which is really hard. So anyway, I just wanted to interject with that, Natalie.
Yeah, no, that's great. A great thing to add. Social media is a big thing, so I know we're spending a little bit more time on this, but I think it's worth it. And just know that there are programs out there all about social media and branding and marketing, and we try to have some of that in our other artist care programming. So I highly recommend kind of keeping up with what we have going on. That will go more in depth about that. And then there's email marketing. MailChimp is a free email marketing service. It can integrate with your website. It can integrate with social media. And this is going to be the most direct way to get to your audience. So if you have those people's emails, you can get them out when you're at events or at markets, or again, channeling that through your other digital marketing efforts, then that's kind of the best way to like speak directly to people.
And then I'm going to pick up and talk about a few more things. First, many of you probably already have point of sale systems. These can come through a variety of sources, through your bank, through Square, Stripe, PayPal, Venmo, Zelly. There are a lot of ways to collect money, and there are a lot of ways to manage that process. Again, this is a situation where I hear all of you in terms of, like, how do you get through all the research? What I like to say is that you should marry the 2 things together. 1, what is easily in front of you? And 2, when you evaluate things, choose the one that, in terms of user platform and how it looks, that feels best to you. As end users of products, being able to do free trials to make sure that it feels right for you is a really wonderful thing. And many of these programs don't have out-of-pocket cost, or they have very low monthly costs to engage with these. There is an endless stream of programs out there. You will not find the perfect one. Find the one that makes sense for you, that you enjoy the look and the feel of it, and then you can lean into it and make it sing, because what you put in, it's that old adage of what you put in is what you get out in terms of any technology that you're using. Don, you mentioned Webspace or website platforms, like building this. When you've got something that's old, just like, I think about the schools in our neighborhoods, that question of like, do you renovate the old building or do you start fresh? And those are the kinds of questions that are important. And if we are not experts in a certain skill set, then trying to make that decision in a vacuum is very hard. And I would say that finding that person, and should any of you be on the lookout, and you don't know someone specifically, but you'd like to be connected with someone who might be able to give you some information, following up on this email, on this workshop with Natalie and I, we can give you some possibilities to begin to pursue, to talk with some folks to see how you might move forward. So Don, like we instantly have about 5 or 6 individuals we know who are building websites, who in whatever way you need someone could help to support you, whether it's just on the front end or moving forward. So there are, again, lots of different possibilities out here. Based on what you're trying to accomplish, you can find that research that tells you based on what I need, what might be a good fit. Are you going to get around doing the research? No, you are not, but you will fairly easily, using some web search engines and some things, be able to find this information. And again, we can serve as a resource to help with that process if you might need that. Eventbrite is an event management tool that also is great for scheduling things like classes and stuff like that. We have people who use that. We used Eventbrite to schedule this class. It's a very user-friendly platform that only takes percentages off of, when people pay with their credit cards, that's how they really make their money outside of premium efforts. And almost everything that we're talking about here, because they know there are different price points, have different price points, beginning usually with free and then moving into, how deep and detailed of programming that you need. So lots of opportunities here. Crowdfunding is no different. Things like GoFundMe, Kickstarter, GiveButter. Some of us have really experienced how Facebook has leaned into this. When you are looking to fund particular projects that are in touch with your artistic practice, again, there's no right or wrong. It's a question of where is your audience and how are you going to make sure that they see what you're trying to do. That's the consideration you want to pull into play. Moving on to the next one, I want to spend just a couple minutes and then we're going to move into a next exercise, because I've made, good notes. You each have something a little bit different that you're looking to get a plan for in terms of how you move forward. But I want to pause on financial management because that's one thing that none of you brought up. And it is an interesting challenge. Certainly points of sale are one thing, and there are some, some nice back-end features on any point of sale, PayPal, all of those things to use to collect money. There are some nice features. But when we're thinking about a financial management protocol, it's controls for ourselves as individual artists or small businesses, it's important to recognize that 25% of businesses are still conducting finances on paper. There are dangers to this. It is time consuming. You have the potential for human error, and your information is vulnerable because if it isn't kept someplace where there's security there, whether it's on the cloud or you've got multiple copies or you're keeping it on an external hard drive in a completely different location, these are things that can be very challenging if you're really trying to keep financial management in mind when it comes to your business. And so important to think about these things. And we will have upcoming professional practice programs that are digging into this idea of how we deal with budgeting and finance. We've already had a couple. We'll have this will not go away from Summit Artspace. There are online bank services. Probably your bankers, the platforms that you currently use, have tools that you may not be taking advantage of. It's worth going on there to see what they have. And then you have to decide at what point an accounting platform might be helpful. And you have to decide how deep does that accounting platform need to be. QuickBooks is the gold standard, but there are lots of other possibilities like Wave or Xero. There are others that, just give you the bare minimum of what might be needed for basic reporting. Things to consider. Are you spending too many hours on repetitive tasks that deal with data entry, billing, or reconciliations? If you spend a lot of time on this, then going to a technology-based platform can be super helpful in automation. If you have too many accounting tools across tasks, in other words, you've got many places where you're dealing with financial aspects of your practice, using an accounting program can help to integrate those together. And we're going to talk about some synergies that come from that later. If you've got a lot of growth in your business at a particular time, that's a great time to kick in and do this, whether you do it on your own or with the help of another person. If you need to better understand cash flow and performance, if you're really relying on those monies that are coming in and out, then an accounting program can help you with tools that get you the information you need to know what's going to happen 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, given variables. And if tax time is a big consideration for you, if you're finding that challenging, this is a great way to help to streamline that process. So all of these are considerations. You don't have to do this. In fact, I would say, Don, you have a wonderful saying on your email taglines that says that in terms of technology, even that says just because you can doesn't mean that you should. Have I got that right? Yeah. And you don't want to do these things until you need them. But once you know you need them, lean in. But just having them when you don't need them is a waste of your time. So that's a really important thing to say about technology. We do not need all the things all the time. It's better, we'll talk about this too, better to focus. Next slide. Things to consider when it comes to financial management. Are you going to do this yourself? Are you going to use an external person, or is there a hybrid that you can, come into in terms of how you're going to do that work? At what points is external help, a good thing? When you're beginning something new, when there are changes, at tax time, or do you need it all the time? You need to consider cost. These are often based on the number of transactions or desired features. And also, it's going to take time to work on the platform. If you're going to commit to this, you have to have some amount every week that's going to be consistent in terms of that platform and supporting it. This is true beyond financial management in terms of technology-based platforms, but especially on financial management, you've got to make that a consistent part of your practice. Finally, there's a lot of free help available. Financial empowerment centers, small business administration centers, SCORE, community development corporations, the library, which Natalie mentioned earlier. These are all free resources that when it comes to these financial management tech programs, totally available to all of us. And when it comes to tax, especially if you're selling work, this is something you've got to keep track of. Sales tax, income and business tax. If you are employing anybody, or even if you're just doing 1099s in some way, that's stuff you have to track. So these are things that it's really important. There's always going to be some element of how much can I do by myself and when can I get help from a person? And there are free resources for people on this. And we'd love for you, if you're interested, to lean into those. This is a place where there are a lot of barriers to success. And we have a lot of tools locally and human beings who can help us get past that. All right, moving on. That's enough on finance. And then I'm going to skip through this real quick and say, you guys, there are general administrative things we use, but they are big. They are things that require, you're going to see, it's like keeping them up, making sure we're using them. Things like these all-in-ones suite programs and project managements, until you need them, don't worry about it. Use the tools you need. But you'll know when you start to feel the desire for these things, or you've got enough people or activity around you that they could be helpful. The last thing I'll mention is, I think it's tremendously important what Natalie said about list management earlier. List management is about who do you know, who is in your networks, and how are you continually engaging them in conversation, not just about what you have available for purchase, but about what you are doing as an artist. So however you manage that list of people, whether it's Excel or whether it's another way that's like Monkey, Survey Monkey or Constant Contact, things that are more price-based and cost, fee-based, you want that list and you want to be communicating with those individuals. And that's something too that I think that Summit Artspace, we can help with the basics around that, so that if you need some assistance there, we can point you in the right direction. We want to move on to this next phase, to pause and adjust. I heard you, and Natalie heard you when you said Illustrator, online marketing, website, social media. Think about what you just wrote. And Natalie, why don't you take them through these next sets of self-reflection questions?
I was having trouble unmuting myself there. So yeah, after we've heard this, how have your initial thoughts changed? So take a couple minutes, and maybe jot that down.
And I think what we're talking about here specifically is not like all the technology that's available, but the kinds of considerations that come with that technology that we've sort of begun to think about. Do it yourself versus someone else doing it, or a hybrid. The time that it takes to do something, or what are some of the barriers that, like you originally wrote down some things that are keeping you from doing this. Are there any thoughts you've had over these last few minutes that you're like, I need to add that into the equation?
Just going to have a few more seconds here for the people who are writing. So moving on, what are 1 to 2 additional tech-based changes that would make a difference for your practice? So what are those things maybe that we were just talking about? Now that we've gone through some things, what's coming up for you? Is there an order of implementation, and why does that matter? Maybe you need to zhuzh that website a little bit before you can start sharing it with people.
Or maybe there's a body of work that you need to digitize and make sure is available before you can begin building that website out.
Yep.
So the kinds of things that, like what comes first in preparation? And how might I make that happen? What research could I do on either, for example, social media platforms and who can be found where, or research on training possibilities for Illustrator that are fast, clean, essential? Where would I find those?
Okay, we're moving on. Now, what barriers do you need to overcome to move forward? Emotional, financial, physical, skill development, or learning? There might be a lot of things holding you back from starting to use these things. As Heather mentioned, maybe you need to do a bunch of research first. That would be skill development and learning. Maybe you need to get rid of the emotional blocks of telling yourself, man, I don't make enough money to actually start tracking my finances or something. How can you use time as a resource to accomplish these changes, and who can actually help with these changes? Those might be other artists, they might be, maybe a financial planner, maybe an accountant, maybe there are organizations like some Artspace that can help you with these things.
Sometimes you might just need an accountability partner to talk through and say, here's something I'm trying to accomplish. Can we touch base on this every once in a while to move this forward? Whether it's someone who's familiar with that situation or not. I can't help it, Don. I can't help but know that you have someone right next door to you here at Summit Artspace that might be a wonderful accountability partner on a website design.
Has he moved upstairs yet?
He has. Not, well, no, only halfway. But this is the thing. Sometimes we have to think about, like, it's hard because we think a particular thing about who we might approach to involve in something. But honestly, we actually have broader spheres sometimes than we imagine, or it's an opportunity to create a new connection to make something happen. And breaking down those boxes sometimes to find a person who can help us in some way can often be a catalyst to moving forward, whether it's a paid situation or not.
True. Yeah.
So we are running low on time, but does anyone want to share their thoughts? And before, while you guys are thinking, I just want to call out that all the whole point of these self-reflection questions are to get you to a plan. Now that you've had that time to think about it and you continue to think about it and marinate on it, you have everything you need to create a plan to start implementing these things. You might have an idea of where you need to start, who you need to talk to, how much time you might need, what you need to do first before doing another thing. It's essentially a plan to start doing this. Any thoughts coming up for you guys?
I've realized that I have actually quite a few people that can help me with a lot of the issues that I need, and I just need to overcome the reluctance to ask them for help.
Mm.
And sometimes that's an emotional barrier, right? You might,
Oh, absolutely.
a lot of artists struggle with imposter syndrome, you know, thinking they're not far enough along to be asking things like this. But
Like
Yeah.
an accountability partner would probably help me. And I have what, like 15 people from the artist launchpad that I could probably lean on and say, hey, and I just need to, I guess, get myself to do that.
I think part of the challenge too is that you can't bite off too much at one time. This is important. You know, there's so much media and I'm going to say not just direction and, you know, shoulds and coulds, and you should be doing this, and why aren't you doing that? And it's really important, as Natalie said at the top, to be kind to ourselves and to understand that when you are undertaking new technology, especially, that often if we can do this, if we have the luxury to do this and to work one step at a time in one platform at a time, we all know that how our artistic practice often works that way. Lean into how your artistic practice works and use that same thrust, that same process that you know, and apply it to how you might incorporate a technological aspect in your artwork or in your practice to support your work. Lean into what you know about how you learn and how you do, and try and transfer that to this as well. Any other thoughts or ideas that came up? I want to call out one of money, because sometimes that's something we don't speak about. Is that something for anybody that is a real, you know, like I know for me, there are always programs that I wonder, okay, I don't have the money for that program, or I think, oh, yeah, okay, great. Is there anything specific you want to call out there? Is it Illustrator is just expensive? Is that what it is?
No, it's just a general, it's
Sorry,
not
this
coming
is
up
Mary.
where I need it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is this idea too of time as a resource can tie into money too. You know, a lot of these things don't exist in a vacuum. They interconnect with each other. And so thinking through some of these things, often we can think through, okay, well, if money is a concern right now, how can I shift and change this so that maybe money 6 months from now could be a slightly different scenario? Or who could I talk to see if there are other possibilities or other resources that might not cost that much that could also give me some of the things that I need? In this case, it is a myth that we should all be able to figure it out by going to the internet. Often it is ideal to talk to other people about what they know and what they see and who they know that they could put you in touch with to make that happen. Technology doesn't mean that we take the people out of the equation.
I think one of the suggestions that was given is to make a list of contacts that you could talk to about the issues that you may be having, and to continue engage in that kind of conversation to keep yourself motivated is a very good idea. The second idea that you presented, I think, is very good, is to start a list of where you have shown and what you have shown and the date. Someone else had suggested that to me at the Akron Society of Artists. They actually use an index card system, the old-fashioned system, but an Excel spreadsheet would work with that, which I think is also a very good suggestion, which I'll start.
That's terrific. And I just want to say that there are so many different levels of technology. Use the level that makes sense for you. You know, Excel is a wonderful list program. The kinds of programs that Natalie mentioned up top that are like digital archiving are more robust. Use the thing that you know you'll be able to maintain. You can always move into more robust platforms when you are ready, but sometimes baby steps are the best way to move forward. And then you've got the material and the information and the data that you'll need to move to the next thing when you're ready. It's hard. We get shamed sometimes into thinking we have to do this big thing when this smaller thing will suffice. And that's important to know when it comes to technology too.
So as we are wrapping up, we are going to talk about just some of the potential pitfalls with integrating technology and how to avoid them. We've already kind of mentioned a lot of these things actually just through discussion organically. So I figured we can kind of roll through them. But if anyone has anything coming to mind, pop it in the chat. So for one, the tail wagging the dog or putting the cart before the horse, always remember that the point of doing this is to support your artistic practice and whatever business model that might mean. So those things kind of have to come first. So know why you're doing what you're doing kind of before you do it. And that's going to help make sure that you're achieving success and that those intentions are giving you the results that you want. It's really easy, as we mentioned, to have that platform overwhelm. If you try to start too many things all at once, all the lists of things that we just gave you, you're going to become overwhelmed. So again, researching training videos and blogs, most of these platforms have their own training videos that are free and accessible on the website. And there's always YouTube. And as Heather mentioned, honestly, just talking to other people. So that's where leveraging your networks comes in. And sometimes if it's just not working out, maybe you can pay someone to show you so that you can be self-sufficient, or pay them to fully take over that aspect of your practice. And then lastly, again, using time as a resource. We'll keep saying that.
Is this me?
Yeah.
What to do when? So this, again, this idea of you want to do really well at the one thing before, or maybe even in place of, being the spread way too thin across the many. So find the thing that based on your practice might make the biggest impact, knowing what you know right now, and lean into that. Give yourself the time to fully leverage and sustain that platform. You do not want to get into, getting into a technological platform that you can't sustain. So ensure that you have the time before you move into that space, that you're able to make that time. And then in terms of systems backup, this is just really important when it comes to technology, thinking through how you are making sure that your work is protected. Do you need to look at, in some way, shape, or form, insurance that is cyber and otherwise? Sorry, Natalie, can you go back real quick?
Oops.
Contract and agreement management. There are technological tools for that. You may or may not need that, but there are free programs that can help you get to a professional place when you have agreements that you're trying to manage. Privacy concerns are always something you should be paying attention to when you do your research. Making sure that your intellectual property is protected by using safe, credentialed technological programs is really important. And then your digital storage, make sure that there are some fault tolerance. That's like, how do you make sure that your stuff is taken well care of? You do not want to have all your stuff just on your tower PC or your own laptop. If it is only existing there, you are vulnerable. The same principle applies. Go to others, go to other resources to find out ways that you can have that backup in place in case something were to happen, because technology is not completely fault proof.
And last but not least, again, making sure that the things that you're choosing to do yourself and what you might be outsourcing are aligned. So are you potentially forcing yourself to do something that you really hate? If it's
Don't do that.
Don't do that. And then are you paying the right person to do something? So maybe you're outsourcing something in a way that might not really be fully authentic to your artistic practice and that original business model, remember? So like, you want to make sure that if you're paying someone on social media, that they are accurately reflecting that original vision that you want your art to be reflecting.
And again, that's an issue of tail wagging the dog, right? If you don't come in knowing exactly what your values are as an artist, what it is important for you artistically to share, and somewhat, believe me, the folks that you hire, they will have their ideas. So it's really important for you to be able to advocate for yourself and make sure that you're using the technology to showcase and advocate and sell your work in the way that you want it done. You have the agency rather than someone else telling you how it should happen. It should always be a partnership when it comes to technology. Even if you don't have all the skill sets, you know how to represent you.
yeah, this is a wrap, you guys. I mean, we covered a lot of ground tonight. So we hope you're not feeling overwhelmed in this moment, but go back to those notes with the self-reflection questions and remember everything we talked about, what you can start first, how you can use time as a resource. And then, we'll be sending this recording out. We'll be sending the PowerPoint presentation out so that you guys can keep referring back and hopefully just help you start to integrate some of this stuff into your practice.
And we'll look forward to catching up with all of you, let's say, like in a month or two, to sort of see, how is it going? Because again, you are all very specific about the thing that you identified. And while you may have a couple of other things on top of that, gives us an opportunity to say, hey, how's it going? So please know that email is coming.
Yes, and keep an eye out for the other things that we have, the other programs that we have, because all this stuff is, tied together. So thanks again for being with us tonight, and good luck.
Can I ask for a quick check-in before we go? I would love if you guys, and some of you know that this is a practice that sometimes we use. I would love to know, like, a word. How are you? How is this showing up for you? How are you feeling right now? What is a word that describes where you're at this moment? I would love if you feel like you would want to share that word. Please, I'm gonna call on you, and you can also say pass. That's what I always tell anybody. Don, what do you think?
Calm.
Okay, great. Mary Beth?
Informed.
Right.
I feel informed.
Janice?
Well,
Can you repeat that?
I feel better focused. That's 2 words, better
That's great.
focused.
I'll take those 2 words. That's great. We love that. Tamara?
I was actually also going to say exactly what Janice said, and better focused.
Cool. There's no way that you'll ever learn all about technology. We will never get there. And now with AI, we've got a whole nother set of things to keep in mind. But it's something for us to harness and not the other way around. So I don't know about you, Natalie, but I feel really great about those things that you all just shared.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, in some way, shape, or form, it was positive.
Good. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.